Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 33 of the BadMotoGP-Show. We just finished our race in Le Mans, and it was incredible. And while watching this race, I had the thought: was this race the best of the season, or was it Jerez? So, Keelan, what's your take on it?
Bonjour, everybody, and bienvenue back to the Bad MotoGP podcast. We have just come back from Le Mans, and it was incroyable. It was brilliant. It was sensational. It was an art form of a race. It was that good. I had a hell of a time. I know you had a hell of a time as well. Yeah, it was a great race. Just a brilliant spectacle, very befitting for the 1000th Grand Prix in history. And yeah, this is a really interesting question because I was actually thinking about this earlier, and I actually think I prefer the Le Mans type of race, whereby the winner's relatively clear cut, but the battle for the podium is just breathtakingly good. I mean, we had overtakes, we had crashes, we had fights on the side of the track. We had everything. It was absolutely phenomenal, and I enjoyed every single second of it. To answer your question, I kind of prefer the Le Mans style of race, but I'm very interested to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, because I actually think Jerez was better. And obviously in Le Mans, everything happened. We had a hell of a race. It was incredible. And back at it, it might be better. But watching it live, the feeling you get when you're in the last lap, Brad Binder is behind Pecco Bagnaia. You know shit could hit the fan in every moment, and the victory could be decided. And especially with the last corner there in Jerez, you just knew there had to be a move. At the end, there was no move, but you don't know this watching this live. And the feeling you get when there's a battle for the victory in the last lap is just second to none. That's why I love MotoGP. And unfortunately, we didn't get this one in Le Mans today because Marco Bezzecchi was wiping the floor with everybody. And I think if Marco Bezzecchi didn't exist today, this would have been the best race of the season because we had all of it. We had fights, as you said. We had track action. We had crashes. We had overtakes. And if Marco Bezzecchi didn't exist, we would have no, not Pecco, Mark Marquez and Jorge Martin, I'm sorry, battling for the victory in an amazing fashion. And this would have been awesome. But Marco Bezzecchi does exist and he was wiping the floor with everybody. So yeah, the feeling I got in the first couple of laps was incredible. I was like, what the fuck is going on? But the feeling I got in Jerez when there was the last lap and you knew, okay, he could dive into the last corner, that's just extra special. So yeah, I think watching it live, Jerez was a little bit better. Looking back at it, Le Mans was definitely better because there was so much to talk about and we are all here for it. So I would say let's start with Marco Bezzecchi because he had an incredible race. He was in the right position at the right time. He could have been collected from Luca Marini, or I don't think there was any real chance he might have been involved in the Pecco crash. But also, maybe if the crash would have happened differently, he was behind, so could have happened something. I don't know. But he was incredible the way he was overtaking. His pace was incredible. And I'm really, really happy for him because he is such a nice guy. I watched the interviews with him after the race, and he gives this Valentino Rossi vibe, a little bit Marco Simoncelli vibe, where you just like the guy and he's fun. And the only thing where I disagree with him, I think mustaches are badass, and she should definitely rock one. But yeah, apart from that, he is a very, very, very talented rider and a very likable guy. So I'm interested to hear your take on Marco Bezzecchi today.
Yeah, I mean, Marco Bezzecchi was just brilliant. It sounds a bit redundant and it sounds a bit simplified, but he was just phenomenal today. He really, really was. I mean, he wasn't involved in the dust up at the front, which we will get into later on, but he just rode a brilliant Marco Bezzecchi type race. We mentioned there and the Luca Marini and Alex Marquez crash. He was extremely lucky not to get wiped out as part of that. Thankfully, he didn't. And, if he'd have just avoided that, we would have been singing his praises as having a great race. But to avoid this and to go on to get involved at the front and to get a drop one back penalty and to get past that and to win, I mean, it's a brilliant race. It really, really is. I know he ended up dominating and he won by about, I think it was 4.3 seconds by the time the race was over. But I mean, it was a grade A performance from Marco Bezzecchi, and you have to take your hat off to him. He was brilliant. And like you said, you made a great point in terms of his personality. One of the big reasons I love Marco Bezzecchi and why many people love Marco is you get that Valentino Rossi meets Marco Simoncelli vibe where he has the big hair. Big hair always equals winning. And he's just I mean, look, Leo's got big hair. He wins, okay? I have short hair and I'm trying to get there, but that's a different story. I mean, Marco Bezzecchi's got the big hair. He's likable. He's fun. He doesn't take himself too seriously. But to quote one of your famous phrases, Leo, which should go on a t-shirt, he is a motherfucker on the track. That is what he is. He is there to win, and today he did it. And I really couldn't be any happier for him. So props to Marco Bezzecchi on an incredibly deserved win.
Yeah. What do you think about the Marc Marquez incident? Because for anybody who forgot or whatsoever, Marco Bezzecchi after the race admitted it was a mistake, but he was pushing Marc Marquez out of the track into the long lap loop, and he even himself didn't make the track. He was on the green as well. And for this overtake where Marquez lost 2 position and Marco Bezzecchi just gained 1, he got a drop 1 position penalty. So, what's your opinion on this one?
Yeah, this is actually a decision that the stewards got right. I know I'm shocked. I mean, maybe they have put chimps in at race direction. Maybe they listen to the podcast. I don't know. But this is a decision they got right today. I mean, it is one of the easier decisions, but still, look, they got it right. Uh, I'll give them credit for that. And look, at the end of the day, there was no need to go any further than this. He overcooked it going into the corner. He forced Marquez out wide on near the long lap area, and even he admitted he overcooked it. So the drop 1 position penalty was appropriate. He did it safely. He let, I think it was a Jack Miller through. He dropped
Jorge
the position.
Martin.
Oh yeah, you're right. He dropped it to Jorge Martin. He ended up getting it back anyway, and it was the right call. So yeah, right penalty, right decision.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. I feel like when you overtake somebody and they go off the track, it's one thing. It's not cool, but it's one thing. But even when yourself not even making the corner, we have a little bit of a Max Verstappen problem here. And I wouldn't, as a racer or as a steward, I wouldn't want to encourage riders to do this. So I think the penalty was correct, and I totally agree with it. And the way he was overtaking Jorge Martin back and the way he was overtaking Jack Miller was so incredible. And I'm so happy for him that I really get the Enea Bastianini vibes. I mean, he even won in Le Mans, so how similar can it get? And which brings us to the question, like, is Marco Bezzecchi now a championship contender? He's like 1 point behind Pecco. Is he really a threat for him over the last, what's like 15 races? Which race was it? The 5th, right?
Yeah, today was the
Yeah.
5th.
Yeah. So is he a threat for Pecco over the last 15 races, or is it maybe a little bit too soon?
It's a bit too soon for this season, in my opinion. Look, he's had a brilliant start to the campaign, and that is to his credit and to the Mooney VR46 team's credit, more importantly. But like he's not, I don't see him challenging for the title this year, and that's not a knock on Marco Bezzecchi. I think the guy is easily one of the most talented riders in the grid. I mean, we know this, but look, I think it's just too soon for this year. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, people were talking about Brad Binder being a title contender, and now this week we're talking about Marco Bezzecchi being a title contender. To quote the meme, just let him cook, okay? Let my man cook. Let him develop. Let him learn. Let him get the wins and the podiums on his own, and the rest will follow by itself. Like with Enea Bastianini, like with Pecco Bagnaia, just let him learn, let him do it at his own pace, and the title contention will follow. There's no need at this stage in Marco Bezzecchi's career to say he's a title contender for this year. We're literally 25% of the way through the season. Let's just calm down a little bit. Let's appreciate where we're at, but don't put this expectation on him, okay? You got to let him learn and you got to let him develop. So to answer your question, title contender for this year, no, in my opinion, because I think Anea will come back and shake things up as well. He'll be challenging for victories too. But next season and beyond, that's a different question.
Yeah, and I believe that the GP22 is a fully developed bike at the moment. And fun fact, Marco Bezzecchi collected the first win of the GP22 in Argentina, and now the first win of the GP22 in Le Mans. And for everybody who doesn't believe me, watch the Argentina thing. I explained it in detail why the GP22 never won a race with Pecco and with Jack Miller last year. So yeah, to come back to Marco Bezzecchi, the GP22 is a good bike. It's fully developed, but it won't get any better. Maybe he will get some aero updates from Ducati, who knows? But at the end of the day, the GP23 is the factory bike, and the thing will get better over the season. They will understand it better, they will bring updates, and the thing will get better. So I believe the gap between the GP23 and the GP22 will open up. And I also think that the other manufacturers, as they develop their bike, except Yamaha, they don't do this shit over there, they will close the gap to the GP22. And therefore, towards the end of the season, that I believe that Marco Bezzecchi won't be as good as he's now. But to completely agree with you, this is not a knock on him. He's a young rider. He needs to develop. He was a rookie last year. He's good this season, and next season he will be even better. Just give him the proper machinery next year, let him develop, and everything will be fine. But to talk championship, I don't see it this year because Pecco, at the end of the day, if he finishes, he's too good. And I also believe that Marco Bezzecchi can finish in the top 3 in the championship like Enea did last year. I totally can see this. But he has some similarities with Enea. He has good pace. He's very, very good on his day, but he struggles with inconsistency. And Enea had to learn this over the last season, and still today we don't know where Enea is right now. But I think that Marco Bezzecchi, give him time to develop, and in 2 years we can talk championship, I believe.
Yeah, of course. And look, I'm not sure what the right term is. I think this is his sophomore year in MotoGP. If there's any Americans that watch the podcast, let us know what year is second year in the class. I think it's sophomore, but I'm gonna run with that. It's his sophomore year in MotoGP. It's unfair to expect him to be challenging for titles on a satellite bike, and this is only his second season in the class. Now, next year and beyond, I think he will. That's a prediction. I think he will challenge for the title. But this year is about enjoying it and learning the tracks on the bike and developing with the bike. Just let him do his thing, and he will. The ceiling is so high with Marco Bezzecchi. He will grow, he will develop. Just let him do that, and he will bring the rest. Just before we move on, I want to touch on the bike situation because you made a really good point. The thing with the GP22, like Leo said, is that it's a fully developed bike. They know the kinks, they know the issues, and they've pretty much all been ironed out because it's a completed bike. But the GP23 is like a bike that's in fourth gear. It's good, but it still has 2 more gears to go through before it's fully developed. And they've got the aero fully in sync and they've got everything fully worked on within it. So the GP23, especially when Enea comes back, they're going to have a lot more data to work on that bike, and they're going to have it much more comprehensively developed towards the end of the season. So the point that I'm making with this statement is let Marco Bezzecchi enjoy what he's doing. Let him continue challenging for podiums and race wins, because next year and after that, he will challenge for the title. He genuinely will. But at this moment, just enjoy what you're seeing because you are seeing a star.
Yeah, you're really doing this, and I love what they're doing at Valentino Rossi's team because Marini, we can't really talk about Bezzecchi without talking about Marini and the incident. He was in a good position until he crashed, until Alex Marquez made him crash, because it looked like he was saving it, and it was really impressive. He made good use of his long limbs and pulled the bike back up, and in the last second, Alex Marquez was like, whoop. And
Spider Marini.
and also Marco Bezzecchi did a very good job of avoiding him.
Yeah.
He could have crashed into him if he was maybe not as not as alert in this situation, but he said after the race that he kind of expected Marini to go wide and adjusted his line to overtake him at the exit. He didn't really expect the crash, but he expected an opportunity there, and that's why he positioned himself the way he did. So that's very, very intelligent of him. And yeah, I think with the Marini incident and Alex Marquez, we don't really have anything here to blame because Alex Marquez probably didn't even see him until it was too late. So yeah, I mean it's good that there were no penalties because there was this graphic that the incident will be reviewed after the race, and I'm pretty sure if Fabio was Luca Marini and was saving the thing, he would get a long lap penalty for irresponsible riding. So yeah, but I mean, no fault to either of those two gentlemen. I mean, Marini did a good job. He was a little bit unlucky that Alex Marquez hit him, and vice versa. Alex Marquez was a little bit unlucky that Luca Marini was there, and I hope both will be healthy and good to go for Mugello because I believe Luca Marini had something with his hands.
Yeah, on that incident, look, it was just an accident. That's all it was. Marquez didn't mean to hit Marini. He just, like you said, he didn't see him until the very last. So you can't punish him for that. That just wouldn't have been fair at all. And Marini was just an unfortunate victim of Marquez just hitting him by accident, really. I'm just glad both riders are all right. That accident could have been way worse than it was if Bezzecchi hadn't have been able to get out of the way. Thankfully, with Marco Bezzecchi, he's such an outstanding rider with such good reflexes. He was able to judge the situation and adjust his racing line, like you said, to get past both of them without contributing to already an accident as it was. So yeah, I'm just glad they're all okay. And it was what it was. But what's interesting, actually, Leo, just a brief segue on the topic of Mugello. Alex Marquez 3-place grid penalty. I can't say I agree with that. What do you think?
I mean, it was a whole different incident when we talk about the Alex Marquez grid penalty. The last thing I would like to add to the Marini incident, Alex Marquez and Luca Marini get very lucky that Jorge Martin, Augusto Fernandez, and all the other riders who were coming did a very, very good job of avoiding them. They lost a ton of time there, but they avoided everybody, and that's like the main thing here. And to talk about Alex Marquez grid penalty, in the first lap, he sent Aleix, Joan Zarco, and Brad Binder wide in like a little bit of a domino effect because he went for a gap that wasn't really there. And I totally agree with it because I think that if you're in the first lap and you're this, I don't want to say irresponsible, but this aggressive, things can go wrong. And luckily they didn't, and everything is fine. And it wasn't like a first corner incident with like with Fabio or with Frankie in Jerez, where there was just no space. He chose to do this overtake or to attempt it, and he kind of did it. But then everybody else had a way tougher race than they should have had. I mean, ask Brad Binder about it. And with a 3-place grid penalty, you don't really hurt him. It's not like a long lap where you lose 3 seconds. It's a pretty mild penalty and should give a warning to everybody, like, don't be too aggressive, don't be too stupid in the first lap. And yeah, it's not like it was the first chicane where everybody was so tight and everything was so condensed that something happened there. But he went for a gap which wasn't really there, in my opinion. But yeah, a 3-place grid penalty is fine with me because you don't want to encourage riding like this. And I don't remember if Alex Marquez had any similar overtakes or overtake attempts in the first lap of any previous GPs, which could lead to this sort of penalty. But I mean, yes, you could penalize him, but you could also not penalize him. That's totally fine, but I think the penalty is okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting point of view. I'm actually surprised the stewards didn't punish him on the track and just get it over with. I mean, they could have made him drop the positions on track and just get on with it. But with the argument you make, I can see where you're coming from. I think it's something I'd have to watch back and see because I don't remember the incident fully. But based on what you said, I actually am inclined to agree.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, the penalty on track wouldn't have mattered anyways. So
True.
yeah. But to talk about the big incident, which is Maverick Vinales and Pecco Bagnaia, what's your opinion on it?
Well, this is very, very interesting because there's been a lot of debate and a lot of discourse on social media and in the mainstream MotoGP media as well about who's at fault for this. There's a lot of people claiming Pecco's at fault for not giving Vinales the line to come back in on the left-handed turn. There's people blaming Vinales for not acknowledging that Pecco's there and he's going to swing in. So I fall on this. I fall in the middle of it, and I think it's a racing incident. The reason I think it's a racing incident is because both riders were equally stupid and equally responsible for this. I think both riders were also equally punished for their stupidity by crashing out with each other, and they've already been punished enough through their own stupidity. So I don't see any real benefit in punishing them any further when they've already punished themselves pretty much for said stupidity. So, in my opinion, this is a racing incident, nothing more. I don't think there's any more punishment that needs to be handed out because they did that to themselves anyway. So, racing incident for me.
Yeah. And before I get into the incident, I'm very, very happy that we saw a little bit of a fight. Everybody who watched the World Superbike review with Axel, we discussed this, and I'm a big fan of letting them fight for like 30 seconds. In this
Like
time frame,
hockey.
the marshals can clear the track and bring the bikes into safety. And then when everybody else comes around, everything is clear. But give them like a 30-second window where they can fight and really uh, get their emotions in check a little bit afterwards. Yeah, I'm happy that we saw a little bit of this. I would prefer to have a little bit more violence there, but I guess I will have to go to the UFC then. And to come back to the incident, um, it's like a two-corner incident because there was a chicane. And I feel like Pecco kind of fucked up the first time, or the first part, and Vinales fucked up the second part. And what I mean by that is Pecco was on the outside when Maverick braked into the corner and overtook him, obviously. But then Maverick left the gap open where he slid back through and then positioned himself on the outside for the left-hand corner, which, I mean, Marc Marquez did the same and it worked out for him. But then again, Jorge Martin behaved totally different in this situation. But I don't necessarily see why he would do this. Why would you position yourself on a piece of tarmac where Maverick Vinales needs to let you go through in order for it to work out? And you could also just not go for the gap and live to fight another day. But hindsight is always 2020. So, and with Maverick, he kind of swung back into Pecco's line, and Pecco was on the racing line. So Maverick was in the inside, Maverick was ahead, so it was his corner technically. But then Pecco was on the racing line, and he left the gap open, so Pecco had kind of a right to be there. And then Maverick swung back, and what Jorge Martin did very, very carefully was not to swing back, but therefore compromises his this left-hand corner, and Marc Marquez overtook him again. So, I mean, if Vinales would have let him a little bit more space, and Pecco maybe wouldn't have been as aggressive on the outside of this left-hand corner and the inside of this right-hand corner, this wouldn't have happened. And I really think both are more or less equal at fault. I mean, it happened super fast and it wasn't like a big error. It was just like from the outside, it could have been better. But at the end of the day, I mean, if I was Pecco, I would think about making those moves very carefully. because he's in no position where he should worry about anybody in the championship right now except him. And once again, he kind of put him into a situation. It was not as bad as Austin or Argentina, but he put himself in a position where he was pretty much at risk, and it didn't turn out very good for him. So, yeah, I think Pecco needs to be a little bit smarter on track, but I don't want to give him the fault. I don't want to give Maverick the blame. I mean, it's just a racing incident. They went for the same piece of tarmac there and it didn't work out. Both could have been better, but I mean, nobody did a real mistake here. So I'm very happy. And I mean, we got a little bit of a fight. So what more do you want?
Yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, we got content out of it, and obviously in 2023, that's the most important thing. It's not about safety, it's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's about content. That's what we're here
And
for.
memes.
And content and memes, exactly. And if we had the video, we probably would have used that too. But Dorna would obviously cancel us, so we can't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I think you're absolutely right, Leo, on a serious note. It's a 50-50 incident. You know, it's technically Pecco's, well, no, not technically. It is Pecco's line because he's on the racing line, but it's Vinales' corner because he needs the room to swing back in. It's just one of those things where both guys are playing chicken and neither are willing to give an inch to the other. So they both crash out. You know, it is what it is. There's no point in punishing them any further. They were both stupid. They were both reckless. They both could have been more pragmatic, but they both got punished enough already. So leave it and we move on.
Yeah. And maybe we can get a fight card with Pecco and Vinales. And what I liked about it, like Pecco, it looked like at first he thought like Maverick was about to give him the hand and shake up, but yeah, then he kind of punched him, which was a little bit unexpected. But I was like, yeah, fight. And the the marshal, he stood there like Dana White always stands between fighters on a phase of like, don't hit each other now. Um, it looked hilarious, and I'm kind of happy it happened. Apparently, they watched the podcast from last week from the World Superbike review, where I encourage a little bit more fighting, and I'm continue to encourage it because it's super funny. And yeah, it kind of cleared the way for a lot of riders because this incident and the incident between Marini and Marcus, those are four riders gone. And like, can we talk about Augusto Fernandez being absolutely awesome, finishing in P4, but he didn't really overtake too many people. I mean, he had a good start. And then I believe he overtook Jack Miller. But a lot of things happened in front of him where he was a little bit lucky to collect P4 there, and I'm very happy that KTM is providing him with the right material. I'm very happy that Augusto can show what he's capable of. What kind of bumps me out, why couldn't they give Remy the same material last year when he was riding for KTM? But that's a different story, and I'm happy for Augusto. I mean, I didn't see it coming.
Augusto Fernandez is the meme from The Office where Michael Scott's shaking hands with the manager and he's got the fanny pack on. And it's basically finishing just outside the podium, Augusto Fernandez. I mean, no one saw it coming. You know, not even Augusto Fernandez saw it coming. But this, to bring it back to a serious point for a second, what is the one phrase, Leo, we have been hammering home since the beginning episode of this season of the Bad MotoGP podcast? In order to finish first, you have to finish first. And Augusto Fernandez obviously has a burner account and he listens to us because he listened to the advice and he heard what we were saying and he just finished. He just stayed out of the way. He stayed out of trouble. He stayed out of the carnage that was going on track and technically off track too. And he got a really, really good P4. I mean, I'm really happy for Augusto Fernandez. You know, he struggled to adapt to MotoGP. Everybody does, let's be honest. But it was a great result, and he got it by keeping his nose clean and staying out of trouble and focusing on his race. So yeah, delighted for Augusto Fernandez, and I hope it serves as a lot of inspiration to a lot of other riders who think that they can't battle at the top just stay focused, stay on track, do your race, and this is what can happen.
I mean, look at Jorge Martin. Jorge Martin had a little bit of a moment early in the race where he dropped back, I believe, to P10 or something like this. He was far down the grid, and then a lot of things happened in front of him, but he also had a very, very good pace and made good work of the people in front of him. And then had this amazing battle with Marc Marquez, which we need to discuss because this is why we love
Wow.
MotoGP. They were
Wow.
hard, they were fair, they were battling, they were giving each other, they weren't giving each other too much space, but just enough space. And those comebacks of Marc Marquez when Jorge Martin overtook him were incredible. And it's basically all that Pecco and Vinales couldn't do that both of them did, because they left each other all the space they needed, but not more. And it was very, very cool to see.
Holy shit, what a duel this was. This was magnificent to watch. It was so, so good. And I got to give so much respect to Jorge Martin and Marc Marquez as well, because it was just it was such a phenomenal battle, like you said. Marc Marquez trying to slam the door on Martin at every opportunity. Martin coming back, coming in, finding the angle from somewhere and getting back in front again. And it was when I was actually watching it, and I don't want to get too emotional or philosophical because we're here to shitpost pretty much. That's what we do. But it felt like a real coming of age battle between, the star of the present and the star of the future. It felt like I was watching a generational battle between two riders, and it was so fun to watch. It was like Phillip Island in 2015. That's how fun it was. And like you said, it was a very clean race as well. They gave themselves just enough space that they needed, but not 1 inch more or 1 inch less. And that is how you do battle. That is how you do battle in MotoGP. And it was fantastic. I have to say, I think Jorge Martin, aside from Marco Bezzecchi, who was obviously a deserving winner, if Jorge Martin had won that race, that would have been one of the great races of all time ever. But just because of that battle. And Marc Marquez, even though he did crash out, I have to give it to him. What a performance that was, because he was just like a demon on that bike, and it was spectacular viewing. That was a great advert for MotoGP today.
Yeah. And I got a little bit flashbacks from Andrea Iannone and Marc Marquez in 2015 battling in Le Mans. And this is what we like about the sport. This is what we want to see. And when you consider that Jorge Martin had this incident in the first couple of laps where he dropped back to a couple of places, I can't remember where he dropped back to, and then the incident with Luca Marini and Alex Marquez where he had to avoid and lost some time. When you take this aside, he could have been the victor today, because I mean, he was battling with Marc Marquez, and this cost him a lot of time. But if he weren't in those incidents where he lost a lot of time, maybe he would have been in a better position and never be in the position to battle with Marquez and lose this time. And he was only 4 seconds behind Marco Bezzecchi. So my point is, when you take all the inconveniences out of Jorge Martin's race and just compare the pace of those two, I believe he could have challenged for the victory. And it's very, very good. And also, I thought when he overtook Marcus into the first corner and then gave him like a lot of space, it felt like he was a little bit scared of what Marc Marquez might do, because he
With
know
good reason.
he knows Marcus will throw caution to the wind, and he kind of did, but Martin could have positioned himself a lot better to get him on the cutback. But apart from this, it was crazy, crazy battling, and all we wanted to see. And this instance kind of showed me that they were giving each other the space they needed and they respect each other. And also on the crash, like when Marc Marquez crashed, because later on I want to discuss how good is Marc Marquez. When
Yeah.
he crashed, it looked like he was trying to cut back on Jorge Martin's line to attack him again, and then lost the front there. And this was like, it was sad that he crashed, because it would have been a good story for him to return on the podium. And especially when you consider how incredibly bad the other Hondas are, especially Joan Mir with the Kalex chassis. How fucking bad is Joan Mir on the Honda? I mean, he's not a bad rider, but it doesn't work out with him in Honda. And he has now less points than Jonas Folger. So yeah,
Fucking hell.
let's talk about Marc Marquez, because how incredibly good is he?
I mean, wow. I mean, look, I'm not the biggest Marc Marquez fan. That's not breaking news to anybody. But sweet Jesus, this guy is so good. He is he is another level of talented. They're just it doesn't matter if you love him, you hate him, you're a Valley fan, you're a Lorenzo fan, no matter who you support, you have got to admit that this guy is just a generational talent. He has been through the wars with that bike. He's been with the shit Honda chassis. He's trying to make a Kalex chassis work on a Honda bike, and he somehow is making it work, which is just, it's insanity. He shouldn't be able to do this. He realistically should have crashed out in the first or second lap, and yet he was challenging for a podium with Jorge Martin on a Pramac Ducati. I mean, look, regardless of my personal thoughts about Marc Marquez and years gone by and all that kind of stuff, this guy is different level. He is so freaking good. It's not fair. And I actually read a quote from him earlier. I can't remember who reported it, but I would obviously give credit if I knew who reported it. He said, I would rather finish a race like that, basically binning it, going for the win, than finishing 10th and finishing. And that just sums up Marc Marquez, man. He is so addicted to winning that he will literally ride beyond what is possible to do it. And if that means crashing, I mean, this guy is not afraid of crashing. This guy has such little fear and such little regard for his own safety that it's almost perversely admirable. It's almost admirable how little disregard he has for his own safety. Because you have to kill him to stop him from trying to win. And, I actually want to hear what you think, but all I'm going to say is that I applaud Marc Marquez because the guy is phenomenal.
I mean, after yesterday's sprint where he dropped off a little bit, I didn't really had too much hope for the main race, because I thought that if he can't hold up this pace for a sprint race, then he will pull a Jack Miller in the main race and
Yeah.
fade towards the half end of the race. But he didn't. And the reason I thought this was because of his physical condition. He never completed a MotoGP race this season, and he also was away from the sport for 5 weeks, so he wasn't training on a MotoGP bike, and it's different. I mean, it's not the same as a street bike. So very impressed by his physical and mental condition, because I think he looked gassed out in the box after he crashed.
Oh, yeah.
And to still have that dog in him to just fight, and even if he's physically exhausted, is just utterly impressive. His riding style, you saw on the onboard how much the Ducati and the KTM gapped him on the straight, and the way he was hammering the front, especially into turn one, was very impressive. But he made all of his time up on the brakes, and it was utterly impressive. I love to see it, and I'm very eager to find out what he can do in the remainder of the season. And I mean, Mugello is a totally different track. Lots of fast flowing corners, a long straight where the Honda is totally underpowered. I'm very excited to see how he does there. But for now, I'm very impressed. To come back and finish on, not finish on a point, but fight for P2 is impressive in its own right. But to do it on Honda, I mean, we saw what Alex Rins is doing, even though he's not riding the Kalex chassis. We saw what Joan Mir is doing. And Taka Nakagami was nowhere to be found. He was like 10th or whatsoever. And when you consider all the people who crashed out, he probably would have been outside of the points if they didn't. But I mean, kudos to him for not crashing. That's something. And I mean, I'm honest here. I'm not joking. It's something to not crash. It's good.
Yeah,
That's
it is.
how you get points. But I mean that Marc Marquez just came back and the Honda isn't in a state where it should fight for the podium. It should be very alarming for all Marc Marquez and Honda fans that they brought a Kalex chassis to the test and immediately said, okay, we'll roll with this because our chassis is garbage, basically. It's not like Kalex came and said, okay, we have here some interesting points and we like this about the chassis. And Honda says, okay, cool, we have things about our chassis. Can we work on this and bring something for the next? No, they said, bin it, we will take this one. And this should be very alarming. But at the end of the day, if it works for both of the Honda riders, cool. I mean, if it works for Marc Marquez and for nobody else, it's business as usual for Honda. But I'm very, very impressed by him, and I'm very excited that he's back because he adds a level of excitement that nobody else can add to the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, one of the thing you have to factor in with Marc Marquez is that his body is pretty screwed. You know, he's only riding at about 60% of his physical capacity at best because he's so battered and bruised from all of his crashes and all of his injuries that he simply I mean, let me put it this way, okay, instead of reeling off all the statistics. What would 2019 Marc Marquez do to the rest of this grid? He would absolutely obliterate every single person and he would make it look easy because he's that good. I mean, no rider on planet Earth should be doing what Marc Marquez is doing. This is a guy who has taken an off-the-shelf chassis from Kalex, and Honda's bike was that bad, like you said. It's been that bad that they've said to Calix, okay, you know what, we'll take this because ours is that bad. We have no other option. You can't ride without a chassis. We have to take what you've given us. And Marc Marquez is still challenging for the podium on an underpowered engine and a chassis that isn't even his own. The guy's incredible.
Yeah.
And look, like I said, personal feelings aside, he's a freak of nature. He really, really is. And if you actually gave him the bike he wanted, he would smoke everybody. He
Yeah.
would smoke everyone.
Yeah. And I really think that Honda is on a good way with Kalex. If they can work together and fix a lot of the issues of the bike, then I believe that everybody else on the grid could be in serious trouble. And I really hope that Marc Marquez continues to be competitive because it's good for the sport, to put it simply. It's good for the excitement, it's good for the show, it's good for the fans, and everything he does, either you like it or you hate it, but you do something. It's not like with Maverick Vinales where you don't care.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
Joan Mir. Joan Mir is better. With Joan Mir, you just don't care. You don't give a fuck about Joan Mir. He's this average, and Marc Marquez is the polar opposite. Either you hate him or you love him, but he will get a reaction out of you. And he's so impressive on the bike. He's so naturally gifted that that it's very, very, very refreshing to have him back on the grid.
Yeah, I mean, Marc Marquez is a lot like Justin Gaethje, and that he's the human highlight reel of MotoGP. You know, everything he does is Instagram clip worthy, and it'll get millions of views because people love him or they want him to crash. He's a bit like the Floyd Mayweather of MotoGP. You either pay because you adore him and you think he's the GOAT, or you want to see him break himself every single race. And MotoGP doesn't have that anymore. You know, I mean, to bring this actually back to the podcast you did with Maddie, go watch that, by the way, if you haven't. It is a phenomenal insight. You know, you and Maddie talked about why MotoGP is struggling to attract new fans and why it's struggling to be relevant on the world stage. Marc Marquez is one of the reasons why it will thrive because he's one of the last links to the Rossi alien era, and because he is polarizing, he is so entertaining. I mean, we've got brilliant riders. We have Bagnaia, we have Quartararo, etc., but they don't make you feel the way Marc Marquez makes you feel. I mean, with Marc Marquez, you either want him to win every world title every year, or you want him to basically crash at every circuit. And no other rider makes you feel the way Marc Marquez does. And that's why he's prime time. He really is prime time. And look, one way or the other, MotoGP needs to get new stars because the sport isn't the same without him.
Yeah. They basically have a star, but the star has a shitty bike with no engineers. So, I mean, Fabio could fill a lot of the void that Valentino and Mark kind of left when Mark was injured. But yeah, the bike isn't up for the task. But I would like to talk a little bit about KTM because KTM once again is in this weird state where Jack Miller was dominating Friday and everybody thought, okay, this is his victory to take. He will get the boat. And then he's leading the race and he's super aggressive at the beginning of the race where you think, okay, he has some great pace. He can really do something there. But then he just is, yeah, he's in front, but everybody else is waiting behind. So, okay, can we get over this? Can your rear tire start to drop? And then Marc Marquez was leading and he didn't have the greatest pace either, which added a lot of excitement. And I'm hopeful that we can get some kind of a rule set where a couple of back markers hold up the grid for a couple of laps and then everybody else can race because it adds a lot of excitement. And you saw it immediately when Marco Bezzecchi took the front. He gapped everybody and then it kind of calmed down a lot. So yeah, not to say that Marc Marquez is a back marker or Jack Miller is a back marker, but to have some slower riders holding everybody else up would be nice for the show. And yeah, with KTM, it's this weird thing again where they had an incredible race weekend in Jerez. Everybody thought, okay, KTM is good now. Then they come to Le Mans, roll the bike out of the truck, and it works brilliantly. And then for no reason at all, Jack Miller is nowhere at the later part of the race. And Brad Binder is a little bit of a weird character again because he didn't have a particularly good race either. And he got this stupid long lap penalty. I hate this rule where he had this shortcut and he had to drop 1 second to the average lap time and then got a long lap penalty because it was like 0.1 second or sector time, I believe, 0.9 seconds slower than his average. I mean, like, give this man a break. He just basically let Jack Miller go for a second. He lost enough time. Don't give him the long lap. But yeah, at the end of the day, it didn't matter. And he didn't have a particularly good race. But then again, he was involved in the Marcus incident at the beginning, Alex Marcus, and had some mistakes here and there. But he couldn't qualify, which hurt him a lot. I mean, what's the deal with KTM? Are they good or are they not good? So they're inconsistent again. And I'm at this point in the season where I don't know what to think of KTM. Are they good now or are they not good now? Because it's not very sustainable if you're only good in a couple of races and then you can't qualify, but you have a good start. So it's a little bit uncertain. But regarding Brad Binder, he got the most out of a shitty weekend for KTM. He had a very, very good sprint where he finished P2 and it was very impressive, his start again. But then it all went a little bit wrong in the start of the main race and he recovered pretty well, had a stupid penalty. And not that he was stupid, the penalty is stupid. And then, yeah, he finished like P6 whatsoever. Once again, was lucky that a lot of people crashed in front of him. But yeah, he's now in a position where he's kind of always been. The KTM is always up and down, and he gets the maximum out of the package. And therefore, if the KTM is better than it was last year, and he is as consistent as he was last year, maybe he can be competing for the championship. Could be. Who knows? What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the KTM question, I don't even think KTM know what KTM are because, on the one hand, you have Augusto Fernandez pulling a P4 out of his ass, which I still can't quite understand how that happened. You have Brad, I mean, look, I'm not going to beat on Brad Binder because he was put back to P16 by the Alex Marquez incident, and to get back to where he finished is applause worthy on its own. So I actually thought it was quite a good race for Brad Binder. Typical Brad Binder just works through works through the grid, gets to a good position, picks up some more decent points. So I think it was good for him. I am disappointed for Jack Miller, though. I think Jack Miller was one of only two riders to go with. I think he went for a soft rear tire or something, if I'm not wrong. I'm pretty sure he picked a soft tire in his configuration, and I think his tire choice just let him down because when he started getting overtaken, he never looked like getting it back again. And he was dropping further and further back in the grid. And by the time he was P7, he crashed out. So I think it's been a good weekend for KTM, but it's good in that it's inconsistent because, like you said, Jack Miller dominates Friday. Brad Binder finishes P2 in the sprint race on the Saturday, and then Miller crashes out on Sunday, and Binder's what P6, I think, by the end of it. So it's a unique situation with KTM. I'm really not too sure, but this is why we said, and if you join our Instagram lives, you'll have heard us talking about this. This is why talks of Binder or Miller being champion are far, far too premature because KTM as a base are too inconsistent. This is why you just got to let them cook. You got to let them develop and you got to let them see where they take it because even when they've had a good result this weekend, it still feels like you're not sure what they are or what their identity is. So good results for Bender, disappointment for Miller, kind of evens itself out, but with KTM, I really don't know where I stand.
I have a very important message. The neighbor's cat is in our yard right now looking at me
Oh, shit.
while you were talking. I was looking at him. And he actually had a quick vacation a couple of weeks ago in our flat because
Oh,
the
no.
neighbors were away and he was outside and he was pretty young back then. So he kind of came over to our yard and then came into our flat because it was raining and we just opened the door for him. So it's nice to see him doing cat stuff. So yeah, I was a little bit more interested in him than in what he was talking about. But I mean, ain't nobody cares about KTM anyways. So
True.
yeah,
Does
but
Peanut
I
like
think
this guy?
to come back to the whole championship contender thing, I mean, it's the same old story with KTM. They're inconsistent. They have like five good races each year, and then they're nowhere. Or not nowhere, but they're getting like P5s, P6s, because they were, especially Brad Binder, always getting the maximum out of it. And this is what I really like about Brad Binder and what's really impressive to me. But to talk about championship, you need to be on the podium basically every race and at least contend for the podium. Except your Pecco, you come away with crashing all the time and then winning all the time. It's like win it or bin it. And I'm very excited to see how it plays out when you have this super consistent but not so fast package that KTM and Brad Binder represents. I mean, it's weird because Brad Binder is super consistent. Even when he crashes, he collects points. But the KTM is super inconsistent, but he always gets the best out of it, and like he did today. And then you have Pecco, who should win every race by 10 seconds and just spins it all the time. So those two packages competing against each other over a whole season should be pretty interesting, especially when we come to more tracks which suit the KTM better. Um, because they have a lot of braking stability, they have a lot of power, and for example, the Red Bull Ring, I'm very excited to see how they do there. And in Mugello, Miguel Oliveira had a couple of good races in the past. So yeah, I'm excited to see how KTM turns out over the season. But I said it on the IG Live yesterday. My biggest fear, and I actually saw an interview of Pedro today, is that KTM is doing so well at the moment that they kind of lure him in. Like they were in 2020. In 2020, they had a good package, and you thought, okay, KTM is up to something here. And then in 21, they were garbage again. And this could happen to Pedro where he thinks, okay, the KTM isn't bad. There's no need to get out of this KTM family. They're doing well there. I will sign for it. And then it goes back to dipshit everything with KTM. And I really hope that Pedro is smarter than this. And I saw an interview today where he was like, if I can't be in orange, maybe I will be in red. And my first reaction was like Ducati, but then I thought, oh no, Gas is in red. So yeah. Hopefully,
I just got that.
yeah. But I mean, he was a little bit politically correct. I don't know what's his real state there, because I guess he was talking a lot with Remy about Tech 3 and all of this thing. And Remy has not too many good things to say about this team. So yeah, I don't know what's his contract situation. I don't know what he really means and what's like just PR things because he is in this KTM family right now. But he said that KTM, they basically gave him a ride in Junior GP when he had none. And he's very thankful for them for all they did. And this in his championship winning season in Moto 3, they always provided him with everything he needed to win the title. And he's very thankful for it. And then again, I don't know what other manufacturers are doing. I don't know what's his contract situation. And he said, I don't know. So yeah, whatever happens, happens. And I really hope that Pedro will get a competitive bike. That's all I want.
Yeah, of course. And look, the thing with Pedro Acosta is that I respect his loyalty and I respect that he has conflicting loyalties. Obviously, he's under contract with KTM, so he's going to be politically correct and he's going to say, "Oh, I hope I can do this, but if it isn't this, I'll do that." But the reality is, and Pedro Acosta is a smart kid. He knows this as well as anyone. Moto 3 and Moto 2 KTM does not equate to MotoGP KTM. They're not the same entity. I mean, they're the same colors, they're the same brand, it's KTM, but it's like they're two different organisms. You've Akio in Moto 2, and then in Moto 3, it doesn't translate well at all. I mean, like if Remy Gardner, who was Moto 2 world champion, if you look at the way he got treated for being honest about his struggles and for the need for help, and you have a brand like KTM that don't listen, why would you go? I mean, it makes sense why you wouldn't want to go to KTM because even when they do make progress, they take so many steps backwards that you're back where you started. Like you said, 2020, they had a good package, with Miguel Oliveira doing a lot of work in that. And then started the 2021 season, nowhere to be found. Couldn't see them. Where's KTM gone? Because they took so many steps backwards that they didn't progress and evolve the way they needed to. So with KTM, it's an interesting thing. It's something to keep an eye on, but I don't trust them to develop it the way they should. History just tells me that I wouldn't bank on them.
Yeah, and I believe if KTM introduced a aluminium frame back when they entered MotoGP and developed the whole thing within the aluminium frame, and with the aero they got now, they could be very dangerous. But I think the steel frame is too unpredictable to really do everything on this level like Ducati is doing. So yeah, but when you was talking about KTM and Moto 2 and Moto 3, I was thinking a little bit like how Kalex is basically the whore of the manufacturers, where they're building the bikes. And then KTM just rides KTM on the thing. And now in Honda, they're building the chassis for Honda, and Honda rides Honda on it. So, but yeah, they're getting paid for it. So I guess it's not too bad.
Calic should just enter their own teams at this point. I mean, they built the bloody thing. They can be
Yeah.
as competitive.
I mean, if Kalex would get an engine, and let's pretend Ducati gives them an engine, and they will or KTM whatsoever, and they have a good package there, and they can build the whole thing around it. I think Kalex could be very successful, but they can't build engines. So what do you want to do? You need somebody who provides you with an engine, and then again, who would do this?
I mean, Yamaha are dumb enough, they probably would, but
I mean, do you want a Yamaha engine?
Christ, no. I'd rather
They
have a Crown car engine than a Yamaha engine.
They should somehow convince BMW to build a MotoGP engine and nothing more, and Cadex will do the rest.
I tell you what, that's interesting. I think that would be a good combination, because I mean, BMW's motor development is as impressive as it gets. You have a frame that will work. Build enough power into it, make it a V4 or whatever, and boom, you have it.
Yeah. But then again, we come back to the whole BMW thing we discussed yesterday, which is weird. So, yeah, if they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. It's
It's
that
such a
simple. I
shame.
mean, they could have bought the Suzuki project and have the easiest time of their life in MotoGP, but they refuse to do it, so they won't do the Kalex shit and develop their own engine.
I mean, I know this is getting a little off topic, but it is such a shame BMW wouldn't enter MotoGP. I mean, the safety cars are BMWs, the 4 Series X5, so on and so forth. And the promotion BMW would get from being involved in MotoGP would be exponential. It's just, I mean, look, obviously, I'm not going to try and convince BMW executives of something they won't do, but it would be so cool. Because I mean, they're
Yeah,
not doing shit in World Superbike anyway. Just pull out of that and go into MotoGP.
yeah,
Build a prototype bike.
yeah. But then again, you could just drive your BMW X5 with the VIPs over Moto3 track practice and get all the publicity for free without actually building a MotoGP bike. So why would you do
Saving
this?
50 million euros
Yeah,
by nearly killing
yeah.
Moto3.
Work smart, not hard. Yeah, but Pedro, we were talking about him, and there
Oh,
has to be some kind of a Le Mans curse because in 2021 he crashed in Le Mans in the race. He picked the bike up and finished, I believe, P8, which was solid. In 2022, he crashed out of the lead in Le Mans, pulled a Jake Dixon there, and now he was crashing behind Tony Abolino, which was unfortunate because he's now 25 points down in the World Championship, and Tony Abolino is looking very strong. And speaking of Tony Abolino, I've heard that there are some rumors about him going to Ducati, and I would like to see what that's about. And
interesting.
I could see them swapping out DGR
Yeah,
because
I can see that.
he's not cutting it. Also, you don't know what's up with Sean Zarco. Maybe he retires. And the whole Jorge Martin to Yamaha thing is still up in the air. Who knows if this is true? Maybe he thinks of it twice now if he hasn't signed yet.
Mm,
So I think that Ducati will have some openings there.
yeah,
And then let's see what it's all about.
yeah. I think what's probably going to happen is that whoever ends up winning this Moto 2 championship could be in line to replace Digi Antonio. That would be my best bet. Because, like you said, this is Digi's, I think, second season with Ducati. And I mean, the problem he has is that everybody is doing so well on their Ducati and he isn't. And he's the odd Ducati out. And
Yeah.
Ducati aren't going to put up with that. So I mean, to be honest, to bring this back to the Pedro Acosta conversation, if Pedro wins this season and he goes to Ducati, I mean, that would be the perfect transition for him because he goes from being Moto 2 champion to going on to the best bike on the grid. And I think that's probably where Pedro Acosta's head's at the moment. Because, I mean, like we just said, Digi's not cutting it. Unfortunately, I like Digi Antonio, but it was a promotion nobody really saw coming anyway when he was moved to Ducati. So I think Pedro Acosta Grassini, that could work.
Yeah. But who knows? I mean, at the end of the day, he could end up at Repsol if Mark leaves or if they kick Jeremiah. So who knows? But yeah, talking about Moto 2 and also Gresini, I was impressed by Tony Abolino, but it's kind of expected.
Yeah.
But Philip Salac was doing an incredible job, and I'm very, very happy to see a Czech rider doing well. It's good for the
Yeah,
sport.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And Philip Salac did a great job in the race. He was very steady, very consistent, very fast, most importantly. It actually looked to me like if the race had gone on a little bit longer, he may well have ended up pipping Arbolino. Obviously, that's pie in the sky. We're just speculating. But what I'm saying is that I was very impressed with Philip Salac, and I'm very impressed with the start he's made to this season as well. He's been very, very good at Grassini, and I'm very happy for him because I think he's a phenomenally gifted rider. And I think giving him the right opportunity, you will see the results of that. So truly happy for Philip Salac. And like you said, it's nice to see a Czech rider doing well as well. So yeah, onwards and upwards for him.
Yeah. And also what I really like that they red flagged the race, because
Yeah.
when we look back at Australia last year where Jorge Navarro was laying there for 3 laps or
Oh,
whatsoever, I mean they made the right call. This crash looked horrendous. Fortunately, nobody was injured, but they made the right call of red flagging the race and make everybody go back to the pits. Unfortunately, Sam Lowes missed out, but he had a good race there. And yeah, I mean, I also think that apart from Pedro's crash in Moto 2 and the whole Moto 3 race, there's not too much to discuss there. It was a very quiet race weekend for the lower classes.
actually, there is something I would like to discuss because I was tweeting about this earlier. Shout out to Mark VDS for fixing Sam Lowe's bike,
Yeah.
and shout out to Arbolino's side of the garage for helping to fix it. That was a real class act from them, and it was actually some of the most entertaining action of the weekend. Seeing their paddock or their garage trying to get that bike fixed in time, and it was so I actually felt really bad for Sam Lowe's because he missed out on pit lane being open by 4 seconds. I mean, how much of a kick in the balls is that? 4 seconds to
Yeah.
get back out on the grid. And, but in terms of sportsmanship and in terms of class, Mark VDS, a massive applause to them guys because that
Yeah.
was really cool to see.
But then again, Sam Lowe's was extremely lucky that he even had the chance to rejoin the racing,
True.
getting a point. So I don't think he can complain too much.
It was also really cool as well, the French crowd at Le Mans cheering him coming out of the paddock, and they were booing when pit lane shut. I got to say, actually, on another topic of things to talk about, the crowd at Le Mans was brilliant all weekend. They were so into it and they were so engaged with everything. Just a massive round of applause to the crowd at Le Mans because they made that a really special day today.
Yeah, and we got a new record with like 270,000 people, which is a little bit weird because if you go Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you count as 3 people, even though you're just one human being.
Yeah,
So,
that's weird.
yeah, but it's nice to see MotoGP doing well, especially in the live attendance, because that was actually something I talked about with Maddie as well. And MotoGP has been struggling since COVID to really fill the seats, and it's good to see that the live events are doing better now. And also, what's funny about the Le Mans weekend? Every rider I picked to win the championship crashed. Diogo Moreira crashed, Pedro crashed, and Pecco crashed.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I didn't have a great weekend with my predictions either. I mean, hang on, who did I pick? Diogo Moreira crashed out.
No,
Pedro crashed.
You picked Dennis Öncü.
Oh no, wait, no, Dennis Antwi survived. That's right. I can't believe he survived out of everybody. I know I picked Pedro, he crashed, and Pecco crashed. Yeah, so I was
Yeah,
one
but
for
you also
three.
picked Enea and he didn't even start.
Oh, are you talking about in terms of title winners?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, yeah. Yeah, Naya wasn't even there, so yeah, whatever. It was a shit weekend in terms of predictions, really.
I mean you can't predict races anyway, so
No, true, but yeah, it was a really, really good weekend. It was kind of like a throwback to a few years ago, when people were into it and we had really good battles. One of the big complaints that we've had this season is the lack of overtaking because of aero issues and power issues. And it was nice to just see good old fashioned racing again. It really was, it was just fun.
yeah. And also I think if everybody has ride height devices in MotoGP, that's like the bigger problem. I don't think it's necessarily error thinking about it, because when you exit a corner and you see the ride height devices going down, if you accelerate as fast as you physically can, then you can't expect to accelerate faster than somebody else because the level is so close. But if you need to control it more as a rider and maybe have less electronics and no ride height devices, then you can make up time and on the acceleration by positioning your bike and basically by skill. So I think I would like to see right-hand devices banned for next season and let the arrow how it is, and then let's see if I'm right or not.
Yeah, it would be really cool to see. And the thing is, as well, ride height devices, I think they give certain manufacturers a bigger advantage, and that's what's feeding into the sort of inequality when it comes to the racing. But yeah, I think it's an interesting idea. I'm here to see it.
Yeah. And also I kind of enjoyed the Moto 3 race being calm, but towards the end I was a little bit disappointed because like Austin was a great race for Moto 3 because it was kind of calm, but then at the end shit was hitting the fan and that's what we want to see. But I mean Daniel Ricciardo was super impressive. He was so fast. But he was so fast and he took out all the excitement because we want to see battles, especially like in Moto 3. We want to see them battling for the victory. And unfortunately, we didn't really get to see it because it was more of a just riding behind each other race. But I kind of enjoyed the more calm beginning to the race. I mean, Austin was like my favorite Moto 3 race of the season.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point, because you do want those battles, and you want to see people, pushing for the win and swapping positions and so on. But you don't want so much carnage that half the grid's dead before you're even a quarter of the way through the race. So it's an interesting balance to strike, but I think that's what I love about Moto 3. You can never predict if it's going to be a calm beginning or if you're going to have David Munoz fucking everybody up at the beginning. So
Yeah.
you'll always get one or the other, really.
I mean, luckily for everybody else, David Munoz wasn't racing, so he's still injured. So
Yeah.
everybody else basically was super calm because they had no scared of being taken out and being sent to the hospital by David Munoz.
So what you're saying is that we need David Munoz back.
Banned.
Yeah, we went two very different directions for that one. Bands.
I mean, he's a little bit like He's a more dangerous version of Mark Marquez. He adds excitement, but it's not like, whoa, overtakes. It's like, whoa, please don't kill anybody.
How do you get a more dangerous Marc Marquez?
I don't know, but David Munoz made it.
I mean, that's an interesting achievement to be more dangerous than Marc Marquez.
Yeah. Okay, but right now I think we discussed everything and I would like to end this thing. So thank you very much for joining me. And it takes like 3 weeks until Mugello. So
Three-week break.
yeah, I will see you in Italy. What are you doing with all the free time now?
Oh, I got things to do here, there, and everywhere. Yeah, just got a lot of stuff going on. Just sort of work stuff, this and that. Yeah, just boring, mundane things, really. I wish it was more exciting. How about you? What you got going on?
Training for the next fight in the gravel trap. So gotta hit some rounds at the heavy bag
The
and
Fight
then
Gravel Championship.
yeah, yeah, maybe organizing a octagon that they can carry out quickly, put the riders in, let them stand and bang for 30 seconds and then get the fuck out of there.
Oh, holy
That would
shit.
be fun.
That would be really, really good. A portable octagon.
All the viewer numbers would go through the roof.
Oh my God, a pay-per-view within MotoGP.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you everybody for listening and goodbye.
See you later, everybody. See you after Italy.